Y'all think too small, I got big dreams. You just starting, I'm way ahead at the end scenes. Started reading and dodging all of the quick schemes. Money like your Spotify, boy, I got 10 streams. Be real big, I gotta make it just for my kids and for their kids. That's wealth years.
Hi, I'm Daniel.
I'm Sara.
And this is episode 17 of the Dealmakers Podcast, where we talk about deals that fail to close or struggle to close and help you learn lessons from other people's struggles and failures so you can avoid them yourself and learn to look out for certain red flags.
And our guest today is Daniel Talbott.
Yes. So as you know, I think I can actually say it now. I am fully a business broker. I'm not taking on any more accounting clients, helping accounting firms and people buy accounting firms, but focusing on M&A advisory as a business broker. So that's like official as of last week.
You're doing all the M&A advisory for lots of different industry types as well, which is more interesting than my stories because my stories are all like accounting. But you've got one from this week about a clothing boutique, which is a real thing that you can walk into and touch things. And that's
women's clothing, no less, in a very affluent area. I stand out when I visit, but it's fun. No, I love it. I love entrepreneurship. I love small business so much, and I would never own a women's clothing boutique, or I would have never thought to. I would now because it's like crazy profitable. But
is it? Or are you just saying that because you're trying to sell one right
now? No. Like, I don't know that they all are, but
okay.
This one's insane.
Really?
I just got the updated financials, and half of the year they're already at $300,000 net with without adjustments. Like, that's just a straight up net income.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much is gross? Like, to give it context, are you having to spend
1.2?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Their gross last year was 1.2 with 300, and that, like, with add backs, it was like conservatively 350, maybe towards 400. Some other things that were done that I'm gonna keep. If somebody's interested, reach out. You'll get to get the whole scoop. But aggressively we could do 400 in SDE. Conservatively, it was like 350, and that was for the whole year. So like, while everybody is struggling in this election year, this business is thriving.
There's a lot of specifics to that, right? Because it's not like all clothing boutiques are created equal, I'd imagine. So being in like an affluent neighborhood, probably you're just going to get more. You're in Florida.
Yeah, and so generally speaking, I live in Vero Beach. The business is listed online. You can find it on Biz Buy Sell. So I'm not sharing anything that's confidential. But I live in Vero Beach. Vero Beach is an interesting market because it's a very prominent retirement area for corporate executives coming out of New England. So like coming from New Jersey, New York, a lot of people settle here. And so we have a barrier island, and the barrier island is very affluent. It's a lot of big names. A lot of people live over there, have houses over there. And this particular business is on Ocean Drive. So it's like 50 feet from the beach. And it's in like the central part of Ocean Drive. It's like prime real estate. And they sell high-end stuff. So it's like there's a lot of nuances to this. Like, it's not just like a random women's clothing boutique in somewhere strange.
In like a
this
mall. And Tulsa.
There's factors to this that make it that lend to the profitability of the business.
Here's a question I always wonder when I see a genuinely good business listed is, why is the person selling if it's
retirement?
So do you think that it's like, because shopping online, I don't know if you've heard about it, you can buy things on the internet and they'll just ship them straight to you. So, do you think that that's disruptive? Do you think that maybe because it sounds like maybe the population skews older, that it's more attractive?
I think that there's like a built-in moat for this particular type of business because the lines that are sold aren't lines that like when I heard the names, I wasn't like, oh, I've seen that at Macy's. Like, these are smaller lines that they carry that are wanted by people who live in and frequent Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and like the boutiques in those places. So they kind of have like a certain taste that they're looking for. And there's a certain style that's sold in those places. And then when they come down here for the winters, they get their like kind of resort tropical version of like these smaller names. So it's like more of like an exclusivity. So I'm not saying you can't find these clothes online, but like you're not going to find them on Amazon.
Got it. It's not like your Temu orders
Yeah, no, no.
show up in the big bag. I've heard. I don't know.
Yeah, but what was so surprising to me is like I've hung out over there a couple times because like there's some great places to get a coffee or to get a drink or something. So I'm not like hanging out in the store; it's a small store,
I was
but
picturing
like
you
hanging out front.
in the chair they keep out of the fitting room, just like
Yeah,
treating
just like
people
post it up. Yeah.
touchy.
No, but it's like I've noticed it's an experience.
Mhm.
And when I listed it, I was like, okay, this is going to be older, affluent women that are shopping here. But I've actually seen a number of young girls like in their teens that, are like excited to go in. They're looking at the clothes. I know there was one that was like, oh, this is where I found the dress I want. Mom, come in. Like, let's go. So it's like kind of part of the shopping experience when you're traveling here. And a lot of people do travel here to visit their grandparents that live here.
Grandparents want to take kids shopping. That's like a thing too.
Yeah, so it's like more of an experience.
Is there a metric used in clothing, like price per unit or something, where you can kind of evaluate like these are more expensive items? Or
There probably is, but one of the unique qualities of our area is that there are plenty of people who are well off that live on the mainland that go over to the island for a variety of things, and then is a group of people who are like snowbirds. They come in during winter. So this store actually cycles the lines that they carry for winter or summer. They carry a completely different series of clothing lines during the summer that are at a lower price point.
oh, interesting.
So like at any given time during the winter, the store is maintaining 100 to 150,000 in inventory, but during the summer it may be like 50 to 70. So like it's a big difference in what they carry.
Interesting. Okay. There's so much psychology to this type of thing and just the buying process that I haven't put a lot of thought into. So, what have you learned through the deal process?
Okay, so well, before I get to the deal, like just even operating the business, Florida is a weird place because we don't have like a traditional winter. We have a series of cold fronts. So, like, even in December, it could be beach weather. It could be 70 degrees on Christmas Day, but then the next day we could have a cold front and it's 50 or 45. So, something that's so brilliant about this business owner is she keeps her winter stuff so that, like, if there's a cold snap or a cold front comes through, she'll go in early and swap out and put sweaters and stuff out in the store so that, she's like so reactive to whatever is influencing the buyer that day, like from a day-to-day basis.
I'm such a sucker for that. Like every sweater I've ever bought, I think, was because I was cold at a store.
Yeah, it's so smart. But what I've learned, one of the big takeaways, and I kind of knew this was going to be an issue going in, but didn't put enough weight on it. When you're selling a business that is in a very, I would consider this to be the most prime retail space in this area, probably in a tri-county area, just because of like the nature of who lives around it. um, the landlord just has all of the leverage.
Yeah.
And the buyers that we were deep into a deal with, like such a stretched out long period of time, because the buyers were relocating here, so they wanted to close on their business and the building or their business and their house at the same time.
Oh,
So yeah, we had this like 4 or 5 month deal process, and like we were like trying to coordinate everything, trying to like synchronize all of this, the deal, the due diligence, them looking at a house, all this stuff. um they were coming from a different area and they were trying to kind of bullishly negotiate the lease. and
mhm.
and I was like, you're just like, I was like, at some point, and I was like, look, this is like day one of negotiating the lease. I was like, look, I'm gonna go to bat for you. I think
Yeah,
you have the right to negotiate whatever you want to negotiate. I'm just the middleman here. I'm gonna help you. But
yeah,
but be aware that you will get to a point where they just say no.
yeah,
And if they say no, like, if you have to understand, if they needed to rent this space, it would
yeah,
never go to market.
yes,
They would think that they wanted to rent it, and all of a sudden 5 people would call. Like,
yes,
I'm sure there's a waiting list right now for
yeah,
a space to open up in this
yeah,
area. So it's like they don't have to bend. And
yeah.
the amount that this landlord bent on their terms is insane.
Really,
Like, so much. So they they wanted double the. I mean, this business has been there for 25 years, so they want 2 months security instead of 1 month like they did 25 years ago. Fine.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's like $7,000. I mean, in a very profitable business is going to do almost
Yeah.
$500,000. Like it's, but
It's, yeah.
but they like the landlord agreed to do. They wanted 2 months still, but they were going to give 1 month back after a year. So like they were willing to negotiate on
Wow.
things. Yeah, they were. So this is like a crazy one. So the lease, the current lease for the seller is going to go up this year. So
Okay.
it's going to go up by $2,000. The current tenant is going to pay $2,000 more for the next 12 months.
Okay.
At coming up soon.
$2,000 more a month.
Yeah, a month.
Okay.
The landlord was willing to extend this year's payment amount to for the next year for the new tenant coming in to get acclimated.
Oh, why? They're basically just loaning them money for no reason?
Out of the goodness of their hearts. No, it's so crazy. So we had a signed lease term sheet, but not a signed lease. And today is Wednesday. So just for context, Friday's the end of due diligence. They were going to go to market to see that process. How do they go and meet the line, like look at the lines and meet the sellers and all that stuff to buy clothes. That all starts next week. So 3 days before the end of due diligence, they were about to sign the lease and saw that they had to personally guarantee it, which is very normal in Florida.
Yeah.
Very standard. And, LLCs don't exist; they're a fake thing. So most people require you to personally guarantee a lease. And they said no. And because of how I wrote the LOI, and this is why you should talk to an attorney, and I shouldn't pretend to be one. I've never James, cut that.
James,
cut. I've never pretended to be a lawyer.
No, leave that in. That's it.
Yeah. I don't care. You can't disbar me. I'm fake. No, I've never practiced law without a license, but I have provided templates that I should not and cannot advise upon, and people should seek advice, but they don't always do it. And on this template that I provided that I did not provide legal advice on, it included a term under due diligence that part of the contingency for diligence was that we had a lease agreement in place, an executed lease agreement. From now on, I think I'm going to say that we have executed lease terms, or there's probably a better way to do this. But because of that one sentence, like we're going to return escrow, they had every right to end diligence because the lease was one of the terms of diligence.
Oh my God, there's so many things here. It's just like the landlord thing. I'm always calling out and everyone thinks I'm crazy, but it comes up so much. And then you're hammering the drum that I love of like the LOI can shoot you in the foot. But now I'm thinking, I don't do this. My whole like thesis is put everything in the LOI. And I don't say anything about the personal guarantee on the lease. And I could put in there, including a personal guarantee if required by the landlord,
Yeah.
But I'm writing it from the buyer's side. So I'm usually trying to keep more information out of there. But if I'm reviewing it from the seller's side, I would probably I'm learning from this. This is interesting. So is the deal dead in the water?
It's dead. Yeah. Fully dead.
Sometimes the landlord will let you not have the next guy personally guarantee it if your person stayed on as a personal guarantor.
Yeah, and they don't want to do that.
I get that. I wouldn't want to either.
And I even talked to a mentor that's been selling businesses for 30 years, and he's like, every deal is going to have a personal guarantee. He's like, the only ones that don't are restaurants, and the restaurateurs like savvy, and they come in and they say, hey, we'll pay a year in advance with 6 months of security deposit so that they don't have to personally guarantee it.
In the SBA loan, is there a loan in this? Was there a loan?
No, it's cash.
What a bummer. SBA loan really messes with the landlord negotiation because they require it to fund. So any savvy landlord, I try to it took me a while to realize the angle of the landlord in this is what is their motivation in any deal to swap somebody out? They have very little motivation to do that. So everybody always says, I have a great relationship with the landlord and won't be a problem. And you're like, I will never die.
That's what they said. That's what they straight up said multiple times in the negotiation is we have a tenant that's paying on time. Why do we care?
Right. You have a tenant who's personally guaranteed it, who's paying on time, who's a known quantity, and you're going to let them off the hook and let some unknown person with a brand new business that might completely tank it on the hook. Like, why would you do that?
So now we have a situation because there's one more year on this lease.
Yeah.
They very well could say, hey, we don't want to extend your lease because we know you're trying to sell.
Right.
I mean, we've got to find another deal. I mean, we will. And it's like such a good business. I mean, my wife wants it. So maybe we buy it.
Do you not love her? Buy her a boutique.
I mean, we did talk about it. We had that conversation when the deal fell through last night.
Yeah.
She was like, do you want to stay home with the kids? Like, and I was like,
And we're just going to end this early. So like,
yeah,
all right,
I mean,
Daniel's going.
yeah, Daniel's be stay-at-home dad, and
Podcast gets like there's just Cheerios that are being thrown at you.
I wouldn't be the first person to have a podcast that was pretending to do something I did not do. No, it's I was like, no, you couldn't. I mean, my kids are great, but she works so much harder. She works so much harder than I do. One day it'll be easier, and I could be a stay-at-home dad, and she could run a clothing
That's
boutique.
the thing about the time, like I'm at that cusp where you're like, I could do that because I got through it, and that's about the time they're in school. So a great time to quit your job.
Yeah, 2 or 3 more years. Once I'm at your stage, then yeah, I'll quit. I'll quit and work. I'll be a stay-at-home dad. Anyway, it's a great business, and she, it's a cool lifestyle business. I think for somebody like you're on Ocean Drive with like galleries and great restaurants all around you and a ton of cash flow.
And I kind of want this now.
You have to personally guarantee the lease.
Would you have to personally guarantee every lease? Why would you not do that? Like,
right.
To be fair, I see so many leases. I've seen hundreds of leases in the M&A context in the last couple of years alone. So like relatively up to speed. And I am saying you always have to personally guarantee the lease, but that's not true. A lot of people will just have like a non-savvy landlord who's just a guy. I have one right now who only corresponds by written mail. So we sent him a lease assignment in the mail without a cover letter even. It just was like, and I don't have I don't send a lot of mail. I'll use the DocuPost
to like go buy a stamp to send this letter.
So I have to like hand address it. It's like Mr. So-and-so. So it doesn't always look them, like I guess I could get like labels and stuff, but that feels like a lot of work. So anyways, we received it back, signed this assignment, and there's no personal guarantee or anything. So that's nice, and it happens sometimes, but it's very rare and almost not desirable because you want like to lease in a space where they're going to be professional and not screw you over, and they're going to take good care of the property. And usually that's going to be a bigger company. And then if you're so I try to flag the lease thing like on every single call. I'm like a primary care physician who's like, thought about quitting smoking, they're like, shut it. Like I got it. Like stop giving me pamphlets on the lease thing. But because it tanks so many deals and it's like their motivation is none. And if you wait until the point where they have this like pinnacle amount of negotiating power, the landlord does, because they know that if they say no, the deal falls through, like that is not your best interest. It's much easier to negotiate with them when it's like, hey, I might do this. I don't know. I don't have a lot of money invested in it either way. Can you sign some stuff? Versus when it's this fever pitch. And then with the SBA, they make the landlords usually sign this huge kind of, I'll call it a subordination agreement that says they have no rights against any of the assets and that the bank has all the rights. And it has some pretty aggressive terms in there, like that are just completely non-negotiable. Like that the landlord won't take the space back for 30 days because it'll give the bank like the right to come in and collect stuff. So landlords do not like to sign those documents. And so getting them in front of them really soon. So, and then a lot of times they're really intimidating too. So they think, oh God, now I have to hire a lawyer. So you're making the landlord do all this work, incur all this cost for no benefit to them. It's a favor you're asking them, like a big financial favor.
That's the double-edged sword to it when you're selling, especially when you're selling in a prime area, because you want to buy a business in a prime area. But when you're in a prime area, the landlord not only has the leverage of the deal, but they have the leverage of the space. Like they know, they just aren't worried.
Do you think you could negotiate something like deals could bifurcate a little bit where when the space is so important, like in that context, where just a lump sum payment goes to the landlord if the deal goes through?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's something people should probably consider. Like if we were going to start to like put together some like lessons learned and red flags to look out for from this particular situation, I would say that if you're committed to doing an asset sale as a buyer, so if you're a buyer, you're doing an asset sale, the benefit to you is that you can depreciate the assets that you buy. So it's tax advantaged for you, but that has costs. So, if you were to do a stock sale, alternatively, where you're buying the business as it exists, including its liabilities, its contracts, and everything, you can just walk right in and you don't have to worry about it, but you give up that tax benefit. There's exceptions, but whatever. Um, See me later. We'll talk about exceptions. But if you were going to do an asset sale and take advantage of that tax benefit, you may want to plan on offering a little bit more money on rent to sweeten the deal, or like some kind of a payment, something to make the landlord not be an impediment to the deal.
So it's so funny the way you said that was such an accountant view. Like the reason you do an asset sale in my world is to limit your liability, not to depreciate the assets as much. And then the stock sale, the caveat is a lot of times good leases are written such that if there's a change of control of the company, even if it's a stock buyout, it still triggers this requirement to get landlord consent.
That's true, because you have the personal guarantee on almost every lease in a commercial space. So yeah, so even a stock sale, you do still have to transfer the personal guarantee.
A lot of times landlords that are stickier will let you add a personal guarantor, but not remove. So you can stay on as the seller knowing that they also have the new person on there. And then you have to just hang out until the end of the lease for them to roll you off. And then sometimes if there's a really big company, like a big platform company, they'll offer a parent guarantee instead. So like a different company that has more assets will guarantee it instead of an individual.
Now, if a seller does do a stock sale and they have to stay on as a personal guarantor for the rest of a lease, in this case, it's 1 year. So it's not that big of a
Yeah.
deal. But if like, let's say it is 3 or 4 years, should they require some of the purchase proceeds what should they do? Like, how can they secure themselves?
You get some serious specific indemnification language in there.
Hmm.
So personal guarantees are typically joint and several, which is a thing you hear a lot and don't really know what it means. But what it means is if there's two people on the hook for something, the person can go after either one for 100% of the issue, and they don't have to go after them equally for 50%, and they don't have to go after one first. So in reality, what people just go after the person who seems like they have the most assets. So,
Yeah.
I always advise my clients of that because sometimes there'll be a room of 4 people and they're all equal, joint and severally liable. But I say, is there any one of you that, seems like they're a lot richer? And there's like one guy, and they're going after you, man. Like, I don't know
Right.
what to tell you. And I think that's important to know. So you're selling and the buyer seems like they have a lot more going on, but also if the buyer is defaulting, you can imagine they don't have any assets. So they're probably going to go after the seller personal guarantee. So then you get the indemnification stuff, but you're still in a situation where that person has no assets typically if they're defaulting on a lease. So what are you going to do about it? It's not an ideal thing to be dealing with, but at the same time, if it gets the deal done and it's for a short period of time, I have negotiated the joint and several language. So that's not always the case. You can say, yeah, we'll stay on, but we're going to add language that says you'll go after this guy first, at least.
Admittedly, if you're listening to this, that I'm not pretending to be some veteran here. I'm new to this business brokerage world. But it's such a tricky thing to deal with. And I have talked to people who have been buying and selling businesses for 20, 30 years, and it never gets any easier. But the letting the landlord know about the deal is almost always what breaches confidentiality.
Yeah.
So you want it to happen later so you don't compromise the business. But the later you do it, the more power they have in tanking the deal. What are you going to do? Like you maybe you get them to sign an NDA if you're lucky, but then like you can't sue them because then you lose the space anyway.
I get why people say I have a great relationship with the landlord, even though that's completely absurd because I hear it so often and it doesn't pan out that way at all. But it is good to try to have a great relationship with the landlord so that they're willing to play ball when that kind of thing happens. And I think maybe the one thing to distill from this interaction, this like bad outcome, which I'm just hearing about for the first time, so sorry that happened, is that you should not overestimate your negotiating power when it comes to a landlord, because like you have none. So be collegial, be willing to sometimes they'll even require like your spouse to personally guarantee the lease. I'm dealing with that right now, and the person says, is this reasonable?
Yeah, in case somebody passed away or something,
or in case people get clever. I don't know how many clients have said to me, I've got a great idea, I'm going to put all my assets in my spouse's name, or I'm going to be a women-owned small business and get all those government contracts by putting my whole business in my 18-year-old daughter's name. You're like, that's great. People have thought about that. They've tried this before. So you're not the first one. So.
Lessons and red flags. I think for me, I don't have a great lesson for anybody to share, I'm sorry, on when you should talk about lease, whether it's early in due diligence or late in due diligence, but like you gotta weigh it out based on the experience. If you're a seller, again, it depends on your relationship. It's probably better to know where you stand if you're going to sell.
Yeah.
So a lease, especially a lease that's not drafted by competent legal counsel, it could be good or it could be bad. Like it could be great if you have a nice, formal, drawn out lease that includes provisions for if you were to sell the business, but it may also be more limiting. Whereas if you have, back of the napkin lease, it may be easier to get away with stuff, but you're also going to be have greater liabilities. So I'm going to admit I'm out of my depth on this one. It's a learning experience for me. Sarah, do you have some lessons from your experience or red flags people could watch out for to take away from this and how to make this not a deal killer?
I mean, just that's what I'm always trying to hammer is be very afraid of the landlord, because you can't make them do anything. It's like employees. You can't force anyone to come work with you, and the seller can't force anyone to, lease you the space or come work with you. So since the two parties of the deal can't control it, you really have to use all the possible EQ. But yeah, I think if you're the seller, building in some kind of reason, some kind of motivation for the landlord to move forward, even if it's just a conversation where you say, this is the reason I trust this person as a buyer to pay me for probably years to come. I would not enter into this deal if I thought they were going to be anything but great to you and your space. So.
Well, there we go. I think that's great advice. Don't lose the deal like I did a couple weeks out from closing. Talk to the landlord, incentivize them, just pay them off. Greasing palms is always the answer.
Old school corruption.
Yeah.
Case full of cash. Park bench.
Yeah, that's how businesses are bought and sold. Still old school, still greasing palms.
I actually have to go right now to a park with a briefcase full of cash. I'm kidding. Don't disbar me.
The briefcase of cash, of cash, or a baseball bat, right? Get the deal done. This has been episode 17. If you got any value from this, please like, subscribe, and follow us on the social media platforms. Comment if you have any questions you'd like for us to answer.
Big, I gotta make it just for my kids and for their kids' kids. That's wealth years and years. Promise my brother soon as he out to finish this bid, we finna do it bigger than